The stars shimmered like old embers above the triangulum broadcast ring, a vast tangle of orbital cities suspended in silence. From orbit, it looked like a halo crowning an invisible god. Within, it was anything but divine. Crowds had gathered in the viewing halls, multi-species spectators, fed and buzzed by 100 flavors of stimulant, their eyes lit by holographic feeds. The host, a Zarnian with opal skin and 4 faces, stood center stage, voice smooth and indulgent. Welcome to Trial 1443. Tonight's combat, a solo human ensign, green, under-equipped, charmingly fragile, versus a Threxian vanguard led by none other than Zalthun Viarkesh. Will the human make it to minute 5? Place your bets. On screen, Lieutenant Anya Thorne adjusted her helmet in the troop bay of the drop ship. Her pulse fluttered, elevated, but steady. She was 23, fresh from Earth's Outer System Academy, and armed with what she'd been told were non-lethal trial weapons. Across from her, a fellow human trooper tapped her shoulder. Nervous? Anya gave a half-smile. Only if I start thinking about the ratings. The ship lurched. The red light shifted to green. She stepped forward as the bay doors opened to an artificial canyon below. Arena terrain, simulated, neutral, sanctioned. This was supposed to be symbolic, a war game for diplomacy, a carefully rigged spectacle. But something itched at the back of her neck. Her boots hit the dust. Anya 01, boots down, she said into the calm silence replied. Then her HUD flickered. A new voice cut through, cold and amused. Welcome, little ape. We were hoping they'd send something edible. She spun just as plasma fire screamed past her head. The first shot was real. Too real. Anya dropped into a ravine, panting, ducking under gunfire that carved molten holes into stone. These weren't simulation weapons. This wasn't a game. The Threxians came fast, 6 of them, armored in bone metal, eyes like burning tar. She returned fire, dropped one with a lucky shot to the throat. The crowd roared. Trial 1443 has gone live, the host announced. Confirmed lethal engagement. Anya dove behind cover. Control, this is Lieutenant Thorne. I am under actual fire. Real casualties. This was not the agreement. Static. Another Threxian charged. She rolled aside, fired into its ribs, and watched it crumple. Her breathing was ragged, furious. She had trained for this. But not for betrayal. Above, in a dim asteroid outpost no longer listed on star charts, Elias Thorne sat before a rusted console. The feed stuttered into clarity. He watched his daughter fight. Alone. No backup. No command. Just survival. He didn't speak. Just watched. A Threxian pinned Anya against a jagged wall. She screamed, drove her blade up beneath its jaw, and then the real one came. Zalthun himself, elegant in black chitin, stepped from the shadows and impaled her through the abdomen. Anya's scream cut off. Her hands trembled as she tried to speak into her comm, mouth working soundlessly. The last thing Elias saw was her reaching for her badge. Then static. He stared for a long moment. A breath. Another. No movement in his body, just the faintest narrowing of his eyes. He stood. In the dim chamber behind him, the lights of an old locker flickered to life. A retinal scanner blinked green. Inside, the armor of a Vanguard Ghost operative, sealed for 15 years. The badge of a unit long thought dismantled. Elias opened the locker, pulled the combat skin free, and began the methodical process of suiting up. There was no ceremony to it. No dramatic soundtrack. Just silence and intent. He moved to the console and tapped an override sequence. Protocol Thorne 01, reactivation authorized. A small alert flared across several forgotten defense networks. Down in the ring, Threxians laughed. Holocore execs debated whether to apologize or spin it. Viewer numbers climbed. A new banner scrolled across the feed. Human female killed in combat trial. Galactic ratings surged by 1,180%. No one noticed the ship that launched from the edge of known space. It wasn't large or fast by current standards. But it had one function, and that function was awake again. Inside, Elias whispered 2 words. 7 minutes. The triangulum broadcast ring shimmered above the neutral zone like a jeweled wound. Beneath its glamour and glossy feeds, 1,000 systems pulsed, security grids, commerce flows, airlocks with scanners too old to question anything subtle. That was its weakness. Elias Thorne exploited it. His stolen diplomatic clearance pinged once, barely a blip, and the ring admitted him. No flags. No suspicion. Just another grain in a galaxy of noise. Inside his ship's cockpit, Elias watched the map unfold. The Threxian delegation quarters. The holocore data spine. A maintenance corridor no longer on the latest blueprints. Every piece clicked into place. "Show me Vyarkesh," he said. His onboard assistant, a voice without personality, responded. "Tracking 6 Threxian heat signatures in Deck Core 7C. Zalthun Vyarkesh is among them. Mark the others." Done. No hesitation. He locked his armor. Silently, the plates magnetized around his body, black, worn, functional. Not a costume. Not for show. This suit had killed in 8 systems before the wars ended. Elias palmed a case. Opened it. Inside, a single compact knife and a kinetic flechette pistol. No signature. No trace. Then he moved. In the holocore executive suite, panic was slowly being buried beneath calculation. "We didn't authorize live combat," said an oily-jawed silent delegate, adjusting his collar. "No one will care," replied Vera, head of audience metrics. "The numbers justify themselves. Humans are emotionally combustible. You saw what happened. That scream, the blood, raw drama. Unfiltered. That's what sells." "You're suggesting we leave the feed up?" another asked. She leaned forward. "We rename it the 7-Minute War. Spin it as a tribute. A father's vengeance. A species' rage. People will eat it up." Unseen by them, Elias was already inside. Deck 6 was quiet. Luxury housing for high combatant guests. Threxian symbols lined the walls, etched in obsidian and polished steel. Ritual phrases. Honor nonsense. Elias walked past them like they didn't exist. He paused at a door. The HUD blinked JHS, VR, rank, lieutenant, status, alone. He didn't knock. The door hissed open. Inside, Josver turned, surprised. "Who?" The blade entered his throat before the word finished. No noise. No scream. Elias caught the Threxian as he fell, lowered him to the floor. He reached into his belt pouch and pulled out a small cloth patch, Anya's unit insignia. He placed it on the Threxian's chest like a signature. Then he walked out. Zalthun Vyarkesh reclined in a room built for kings. The ceiling above him played silent footage of the trial. He studied the human girl's final moments again and again. There was an elegance to it, he thought. Her desperation. Her fight. Brief but beautiful. His second-in-command, Krell, stood nearby. "There's been an incident," Krell said. Zalthun didn't look away from the projection. "Speak." "Josver is dead. Found in his suite. Throat cut. No alarms. Who would dare?" A pause. There was a mark. The same unit insignia the girl wore. Now Zalthun looked up. "A grieving parent, perhaps?" he asked, tone mocking. Krell hesitated. "We believe it's her father. Elias Thorne." That name landed differently. Vyarkesh frowned. "That name shouldn't exist. He was Ghost Class. Purged. Vanguard Protocol. Apparently he wasn't." Zalthun stood slowly. "Get me visuals. Every corridor. If he's aboard, he's not leaving." Elias moved through back channels, and used maintenance shafts, sealed hatches, power conduits. His mind operated with surgical clarity. There was no hesitation, no self-doubt. Just the mission. His next target was in the training deck. 2 guards stood at the entrance, both armed. Elias knelt behind a junction box, attached a micropulse charge to the wall. A quiet hum. 5 seconds. Boom. The panel exploded outward, blinding flash. Elias emerged, fired twice, center mass. Both Phyrexians dropped without a sound. Clean, fast, done. He entered the deck. It was a mock battlefield. Dust-covered floor, shattered pillars, frozen in time from the last staged fight. In the center stood Vax, the youngest of Vyarkesha's vanguard. Nervous, twitchy. Not yet arrogant enough to be blind. He spotted Elias instantly. You, he breathed. You're real. Elias walked toward him. You killed Jaws, Vax said. He had a mate. 3 hatchlings. So did I. Elias replied, and fired. Vax dropped. No monologue. No ceremony. In the control center, alerts began stacking. Door overrides. Motion anomalies. Body vitals offline. Vera stared at the dashboard. Someone's moving like a ghost. One of the interns gulped. They're calling him the Reaper. Social feeds are exploding. She smiled thinly. Keep the cameras rolling. Elias stood over the bodies. Blood pooled across the mock battlefield, warm and alien. His comm crackled. Then, from the speakers scattered throughout the ring, a familiar voice echoed, Vyarkesha's voice, amplified and theatrical. I see you, Thorn. Elias looked up, eyes narrowing. You've made your point. But this ends now. You may be many things, but you are still alone. Elias reached to his belt, tapped his comm. His voice echoed back through the system, calm, clipped, final. You killed my daughter on camera. I'm not hiding. I'm broadcasting. This isn't revenge. It's a message. He cut the feed. And moved on. The war wasn't declared. It simply was. By the time the 3rd Phyrexian body hit the floor, a name had emerged from the stream feeds, the Reaper. A myth uncoiling in real time. One clip, 30 seconds of grainy footage showing a human silhouette walking calmly from a smoking corridor, had already amassed 90 million views. Below the video, one line kept appearing. That's her father. In a luxury comm suite above the central feed core, Vera stared at the metrics wall. Numbers pulsed like heartbeats. Look at that spike, she murmured. Sector 12 is syndicating live commentary. The kill count's trending. Entire species are tuning in. A junior analyst hesitated. Should we stop him? Stop him? She turned. He is the event. This isn't a failure. This is transformation. It's no longer a combat trial. It's the first human myth built live. Give them a story worth bleeding for. Elias didn't notice the attention. Or if he did, he didn't care. He moved with purpose through the ventilation tier, tight spaces meant for small-bodied maintenance drones, not a man in full combat armor. But he fit. Just barely. Ahead, a split. 2 heat signatures. Intermittent pacing. Phyrexian guards. Standard placement. He'd studied their movement patterns long ago, in another life. They hadn't changed. He dropped from the vent. Landed behind the first guard, snapped the neck in a single, brutal twist. The second spun, too late. Elias fired one shot into the chest. The guard staggered. Reached for his weapon. Elias advanced and drove the blade under the jaw, silencing him forever. He didn't stop to look. On the far side of the broadcast ring, Zalthun Vyarkesh sat in silence, watching the Reaper's path of destruction. A crimson map bloomed before him, marking every fallen warrior in his command. They're glorifying him. Krell growled, watching the feeds. He's become the story. He was the story the moment I killed the girl. Zalthun muttered. Now it's balance. Nothing more. He's headed for the data spine. Let him. The Phyrexian lord stood. I will greet him there. The data spine rose like a cathedral at the core of the ring, raw, industrial, pulsing with cables thick as trees. It was here that every camera, every comm feed, Every whispered viewer reaction passed through before transmission. And Elias wanted control. He entered through the west junction, cleared 2 hostiles with precise shots. No hesitation. No waste. At the central console, a wide-eyed tech tried to run. Elias grabbed him by the collar, slammed him against the rack. Loop the feeds. Cut the delays. I don't. Elias leaned closer. Then die tired. The tech's hands shook. He did as told. Across the galaxy, the delay vanished. Viewers watched as Elias Thorne moved in real time. Not an edited highlight. Not a sanitized recap. Now. And then Elias turned to the nearest camera. You watching? He said. Billions were. You cheered when she died. Now you cheer while I carve the cost. He reached into his belt. Pulled out a patch, Anya's insignia. Pressed it against the camera lens. You wanted war. Now remember who taught you what war means. Zhao Thun entered through the upper walkway, slow, deliberate, flanked by 2 warriors. You've made quite the entrance, he called. Elias didn't turn. He kept working the console. Cutting feed lines. Rewiring the overlay. You dishonor the ring. Zhao Thun went on. You're not a soldier anymore. You're a shadow. A ghost. And ghosts die forgotten. Elias finished the sequence. The system dimmed. Then he turned. I was finished being a soldier the day I held my daughter's silence in my hands. Vyarkesh drew his blade. Then come end your grief with mine. The duel was immediate. No pomp. No circling. Just violence. Zhao Thun lunged, blade flashing. Elias parried, deflecting the heavy strike with his forearm guard, stepping inside and driving his elbow into the alien's throat. Vyarkesh staggered, recovered with terrifying grace, slashing low. Elias dodged, caught the edge across his thigh, and retaliated with a knife thrust toward the heart, blocked. Steel rang against bone. Sparks lit the dark. Around them, cameras spun silently, broadcasting the clash of father and killer. In a crowded lounge on Station Arlux, a group of human miners watched in stunned silence. He's actually doing it, one whispered. Another, older, nodded. Not for justice. Not for revenge. For truth. Elias moved like a man who no longer cared about his own survival. He struck fast, with a surgeon's precision, ignoring his own injuries. Vyarkesh landed a blow to his side. Elias grunted but didn't slow. Then, an opening. Elias caught the Threxian's wrist mid-swing, twisted, and slammed the blade out of his grip. He ducked low, drove his knife into Vyarkesh's leg, dropped him to a knee. Look at me, Elias said. Vyarkesh tried to rise. Elias punched him across the jaw, stepped in, and slammed the knife through the alien's chest. Vyarkesh fell backward, convulsing, staring up at the man he thought broken. Elias crouched beside him. You shouldn't have broadcast it. He stood. Bleeding, silent, breathing hard. Then turned to the central camera. Her name was Anya. A pause. She thought this was a trial. You turned it into execution. Now you all know, humanity is not content to mourn quietly. Another pause. This was not revenge. This was remembrance. He walked away. Behind him, the feeds kept rolling. The myth was already written. Blood pooled under Zhao Thun's body, soaking into the grated floor beneath the data spine. Elias didn't look back. He stepped over cables, hand pressed to his side where a blade had opened him wide. Every motion hurt, but none of it slowed him. He'd come for the message. Delivered it. Now he needed to disappear. In the control bay, the holocore technician still stood frozen beside the terminal. Purge the final 10 minutes from local storage, Elias said, voice low. Aye, there are backups on mirror nodes. Dozens of them. The net already seeded. Elias held his stare. Then burn the local. Now. The technician obeyed. On screens overhead, the galactic broadcast still played on a loop. Elias killing the guards. The duel. His words. Already, news feeds added titles, layered music, packaged the footage as branded content. In the margins, user comments crawled. He warned them. Grief made him unstoppable. This is what humanity really is. In a government chamber on Zydron Prime, 3 alien diplomats sat in silence. This escalates things, said the Bryn speaker, pale fingers steepled. He acted alone, replied a human delegate. He was retired. No one cares, the third said bitterly. You understand what he's become, don't you? You didn't send him, but now everyone thinks you did. The Bryn nodded. And if that's what people believe, the implications aren't military. They're psychological. No one will test your borders for years. Back in the ring, the remaining Threxians fled. The survivors of Vyarkesh's unit packed their personal shrines, retrieved the bones of their dead, and vanished into diplomatic corridors. No retaliatory threats. No declarations of honor duels. Only silence. Because even in the Dominion, fear had a language. And now, it spoke with a human accent. Elias reached the docking level unopposed. No alarms. No lockdowns. Holocore hadn't dared interfere. The myth was more valuable than vengeance. They needed him alive, out there, loose, unpredictable. He passed a mirrored bulkhead and paused briefly. Blood smeared his armor. One eye was almost swollen shut. His expression unreadable. Then, quietly, that's enough. He entered Bay 17. The ship waiting was old, sleek, black, unregistered. Vanguard issued. Its course still responded to his ID like no time had passed at all. As he climbed aboard, the onboard AI spoke. Welcome back, Commander Thorne. He sat at the console. Didn't respond. Just stared forward. Then tapped in new coordinates, uncharted space. No destination. Just distance. The ship lifted, silent as breath. In Holocore's central news vault, Vera recorded a final note for the archive. This is the turning point. Not because a man killed, but because he made the galaxy watch. The violence wasn't new. The war wasn't new. The myth was. She looked into the lens. His daughter died in silence. But he made the universe remember her name. Months passed. The feed slowed. The surge ended. But the memory didn't fade. A child on a mining moon reenacted the duel with carved sticks. A mural in Sector 12 showed a father holding his daughter's dog tag. A Threxian scholar rewrote an entire chapter of honor doctrine to account for the Elias exception. And on a derelict station in fringe space, a lone soldier walked through dust and wreckage, long rifle across his back, head down. No one approached him. No one asked his name. They already knew. One night, in a quiet corner of the human colony Eloria, a young cadet sat beside her grandmother. Did you know her? The girl asked. The old woman nodded slowly. Anya? I trained with her. Not long. But long enough to know she was brave. And her father? The woman smiled. He was something else. You don't survive what he did without becoming legend. But he didn't start that way. He just wanted her to live. The girl was quiet for a while. Then, do you think he's still alive? The old woman's smile faded. I think he became something more than alive. One final feed, broadcast from a forgotten relay, played in full clarity, Elias standing before the camera, eyes hollow, voice steady. You cheered when they killed her. That part one can't change. He looked down at something, likely her badge. But now you remember. And you will remember. Pause. Nothing human is small. Not our rage. Not our grief. And never our love. The feed ended. The silence that followed spoke louder than the war.